piece of paper from you, and I got mine mixed up. And I will start with the appellant, if I can find it again. Sorry. Well, I know you're here, right? So, come on up, tell us your name and address, and, there it is, okay.
How you doing tonight?
Doing well, thank you.
My name's Anthony Colgis. My address is P.O. Box 304, Lakeside, Oregon, 97449.
Anthony, can you please move the mic a little closer to you so the folks out in radio?
Oh,
can
sure.
hear us? Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, guys. I really appreciate it. It gives us an opportunity after a couple of years of suffering to actually hear our voice as a community. I'm here to represent as a spokesperson. You've got all of our testimony, and you've got our evidence, and you've got our appeals. So what I'd like to do with my time is just share with you, kind of boil down what it's been like for us. If we try and narrow our appeal and suffering, it boils down to this. The short-term rental industry is huge, raking in $64 billion last year in the US alone. And like everything when it comes to big business, there are winners and losers. In this case, the losers are the homeowners who have the misfortune of having an Airbnb pop up next to them. Ours is not an isolated incident when it comes to suffering that we have endured because of this growing industry. This is a nationwide problem. Just Google the scourge of Airbnb/short-term rentals. Google moratoriums on Airbnbs. You will see articles and comments from residents who are speaking out, and moratoriums that are being enacted in towns and cities across this country and around the world for that matter. Regardless of all the rules, policies, and regulations that are in place that allow the business to flourish, people are suffering because this industry only serves one side, the investors. There is zero benefit to the families that just want to live their lives in their neighborhoods. There's only downside. And these stories are being told by thousands of residents across the country who are having their neighborhoods invaded by a stream of transient individuals. They match our story verbatim. Ours is not an isolated incident. Number one, no matter how many rules and regulations that are in place, you can't change human behavior. Most guests that are on vacation don't follow the rules regardless of the contracts they have signed, even when threatened with eviction or the loss of their security deposit. And by that time, the nuisance has already occurred. This process does nothing to prevent nuisance issues in real time. The damage is done. Number two, the only way to enforce the rules on the guest is for the rest of the neighborhood to call and complain and provide evidence of the infractions. So now residents have the responsibility of policing the guests. This puts residents in a very dangerous situation. The transient individuals that we call guests are not vetted by anyone, and we have no way of knowing their character or history. This creates a huge security issue and removes the residents' ability to feel safe in their own home and neighborhoods. And now we have guests that are angry that the neighbors have complained and they are looking to retaliate. We've actually experienced this over the last 2 years. Number three, when damage or injury occurs to residents or property in our neighborhood, we absolutely have no recourse against the guests, the county, and the guests have no liability at all. They can simply drive off. This is why there is so much blowback from residential property owners nationwide. This industry needs to change. Telling property owners that our suffering is not compelling and invalid is not fair. It feels like there's more consideration given to the investors and the industry than the actual citizens within our local community. There has to be room for appeals and changes in laws where short-term rental operations are not compatible with the neighborhoods they operate in. Here are some questions for you, and by the way, this actually happened on more than one occasion. When transient strangers end up in our driveway in the middle of the night, volatile, intoxicated, lost, pulling large toy haulers in groups of 2 or sometimes larger, and they can't figure out how to turn around or where they are going in our very dark neighborhood with no street lights, what are we supposed to do? Call the property management company? The sheriff? Based on our rural location, response times for the sheriff's department is going to take some time. Or if they do damage to our property, knocking out a fence, tearing up our yards, who pays for that? Or worse, we go out and try to get these strangers off our property and we end up in some sort of altercation and we get injured. Where does that liability fall? What about our rights, our consideration? Again, no matter how many rules and regulations that are in place to enforce compliance on the applicant and their guests, the only people that have to suffer the burden and suffering falls on us, our neighborhood, to police, complain, report, provide evidence, and to live with it on a daily basis. That's all I have.
Very well put. I'm trying to focus it though on the criteria, because our job as a commission is to enforce our ordinance, you know. In
Right.
fact, we don't even make that, we're not lawmakers. We
Right.
have,
Right.
the county commissioners, appoint us to review their ordinance and to enforce it as written.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm going through your items of concern, and I unfortunately, I was listening, so I didn't write all of them down. And I'm trying to think in a residential zone. You guys are in rural residential. You have single-family residents.
Right.
If these people were to decide that they don't want to do a vacation rental,
Correct.
would you be able to know who's gonna buy that property? Would they be able to have parties?
Absolutely.
See, and so that's kind of where I start having, I understand what you're saying, and I agree that the
Right.
vacation, I live in a neighborhood with tons of them, I think we all do. So I understand the impact, and you do see that the laws are changing and the rules are changing in a lot of jurisdictions. I think Coos Bay just changed some of their restrictions. But I'm looking at the problems and how do they compare to problems in a single-family residential area. I mean, it's Coos County, there's lots of dogs without leashes, at least in my neighborhood. Since I'm not a dog person, I take note of it. But, and we don't have a noise ordinance, and we don't have a nuisance ordinance. So in reality, don't the rules put on a vacation rental actually add rules that you as a resident in a house by yourself don't have to have over you? Doesn't it add another layer of enforcement by putting that property manager liable for behavior of their tenants? And so I understand where you're coming from on the housing market, and we all know, the county's gone through a huge housing study, so we know the adverse impact to the housing, but we still have this ordinance that we have to enforce. And so I'm trying to figure out are there issues that you foresee with a vacation rental that are significantly adverse and impactful compared to those issues in a single-family residence?
Can I reply?
Yeah, that was for
Absolutely.
you.
Because if somebody purchases the house, they own it. They're the property owner. I
Yeah.
know who they are. If I don't care for them, or they get out of hand, I can go over there and say, hey, can you guys keep it down? You know? But I know them. So there's a lot more liability for a property owner. He can't just get up and drive away if we have a conflict.
Was
He's
that
got
a
to listen.
long-term renter?
I beg your pardon?
Long-term renter.
Long-term rental, we can do the same thing. We can call the property owner. It's one person though. It's
But
one
you-
group of
But you
people.
call property owner.
Yeah, we call it property owner. But it's one group of people though. This is these properties out there, they're such a beautiful area.
Mhm.
It's a gorgeous area. They have people coming and going constantly. We're not talking about, 14 days out of a year. We're talking about 12 months out of the year, primarily really busy, super busy during the times that it's nice. And we're getting parties coming and going every 3 or 4 days. So it's a huge amount of traffic, toy haulers, all kinds of impact. And if you looked at the nuisances that I provided for you, it's not just about dogs off of leashes. We're talking about serious liability and injury and risk. We're talking about children climbing on breakwaters while they're intoxicated adult parents who don't seem to care. I mean, there could be serious injuries. Where's the liability? We're talking about firing off loud fireworks, mortars in the middle of the night. We're talking about gunshots. We're read the nuisance list, I'm not gonna go over the whole thing, because you guys have that before you. But it's more than just a dog off a leash. That's like one of the minimum ones,
And I
although it's
did-
very important.
I did read your testimony.
Well,
and-
thank you very
and,
much, I appreciate your time.
And I live in Barview, okay, so I hear a lot of this just in our
Well, let
residential,
me add
and
one
it's
more
not,
thing.
and it's not from the vacation rentals.
One more
It's
thing,
from
if I may.
residents.
If you looked in the pictures, ma'am,
Mhm.
these properties, there is zero buffer zone. We're talking about, you can look, less than 50 feet apart.
Mhm.
I mean, there's no buffer at all.
Right.
So whatever they're doing, it's just part of your life now, whether it's yelling, screaming, the frat parties. How do you control that with a property? If there was somebody on site, that's another situation, that's another thing, but there's nobody on site. So then we become, we're hiding in the bushes, we have to take photographs. Our life we can't even sit outside anymore with children because they're cussing obscenities. Now, I understand they're gonna put in these things that are gonna be in place, rules and regulations, I get all that, but we're the police force now. I never signed up for that. When I bought this place, you think that's what I wanted to do with my life, is to police people that I do have no clue who they are on a constant basis?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, I'm just trying to, I have to, in my mind, compare it to.
It sounds good on
the-
paper.
yeah.
I understand all the
Yeah.
rules are in place. I understand it supports the investors that wanna do this and make a lot of money. I understand all that. But
Well,
it
actually,
doesn't-
that's
it
outside
doesn't-
of our
it doesn't-
scope. That's
Well,
outside of our
okay,
scope.
I
unfortunately.
understand that it's in place to make it legal. Okay, I understand that that's what you're saying, but it doesn't, there's not, where does what do we get out of it? Nothing. It's all downside. It's all headache. We get nothing, there's no benefit at all. It's all just abusive.
Yeah, okay,
No, you were gonna push it back first.
yeah,
No,
next question.
yeah, no, I
Thank
appreciate
you
your,
then.
I do appreciate your
You're welcome.
testimony, and I would just say that typically, like when you were mentioning the liability, if these are operating as businesses, most of the time those businesses are required to carry some form of general liability, and so there would be some liability with that. Just wanted to put that out there, that that would be a condition usually for most businesses operating a license, that they have to have some sort of protection around that with the insurance.
So my comment or question, and I appreciate, I lived your dream, and I've lived in the nightmare too myself. But we heard that there's 6 houses already in your neighborhood that are wild party houses, that are unregulated, that it's, people rent them out. All around Lakeview, there's houses that are rented out, unregulated. What would happen if they were all regulated and had terms and conditions?
May I respond?
Sure.
With inside the window of people who were told about this, there's only one property, even close to us, that's operating with a permit. It's on, I think it's parcel 1001, it's on 10 acres. This parcel is in a heavily wooded area, high above our lakefront community, okay? Nowhere near us. It was done long before we even knew what Airbnbs were. It was quite a few years ago. And then we found out, okay, what can we do about it? But we haven't had any problem because somebody lives on site. It's not on the waterfront. Being on the waterfront, sound travels. It's very quiet down there, very peaceful. So we don't have any problem with it. The other ones I don't know anything about. They're not part of our waterfront area. I think there's one at the very end, but again, they have somebody on site. They're sharing, the people that go there and visit are actually sharing the same house, and the people live there. So again, and they're not allowed toy haulers up there, or any of these huge vehicles that are tearing the road up, trying to turn around in our driveways, creating all this nonsense. We're talking about a group of homes that are on the waterfront that are very close together, and every single one of them, aside from this property owner, are here tonight and represent. Some of these property owners have been in the community for over 70 years, the McKay family. We've had, the Glass family's been in the community for over 50 years. I've been here for 20 years. We've been here for a very long time. And we want to keep the community like it was, like it's supposed to be, so that you can have a place like this. Because if it's all Airbnbs, there's no more community. It's just a bunch of commercial tourist places, as you guys say, it's a tourist license. And our tourist place where people can go and visit and do whatever they want. It's a party time. It's like living next to a frat house. It's not something I think is gonna happen. I experienced it. Or we experienced, excuse me. It's not about me.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, is this house next door, occupied 365 or just seasonally, just during the summer?
I don't think
mean,
they've ever.
Well, it's been shut down for a year, and they've never, I haven't seen them even come, or the owners, I've not seen.
I'm talking about the transient.
Yeah, that's,
the
yeah,
transient.
that's, yeah.
So
Because
what
because
would be
of
your
our,
guesstimate? I mean, the applicant probably has information on occupancy, but how,
well,
how busy is
when
it?
it was operating without a permit for 2 years, it, guests came all the time, because we have a very temperate climate. So there's a lot of times, it's not just summer months, we have to deal with it because we have a temperate climate. It's not, there's a lot of times they come and we've had people all
But
year long.
every single occupant has caused problems?
No, I'm not saying that, but
Okay.
predominantly, yes, because
But that
there's,
was before you had.
I would say,
I was gonna say.
Right, that was before.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can't really use that as
Sure.
to gauge it, because again, that was when it was unregulated, and the complaint was filed, we went out, we did the investigation, we told them either you come into compliance or you get the citation, and they chose to come into compliance.
I do have one other question. So a lot of these occupants, these temporary, guests are bringing toy haulers in, not necessarily towing boats to be on the lake, but it's to get on the dunes.
yes,
It's mostly dunes.
yes, and and thank you for mentioning that, because they'll get on their UTVs and ATVs, and they go up and down our road very fast, and they also drive from there all the way through Lakeside to the dunes directly. They feel that they have the right to drive illegally on North Lake Road, down from there all the way to the dunes. They're not
Their
getting.
ordinance doesn't extend that far.
No, I've even
The
talked to.
city's ordinance.
Yes, it does not extend that.
Right.
And also, the staff has said that anything that happens on the docks or out in front of our properties, it's not, they're not regulating that, so there's a whole nother area where nuisance occurs that there's nothing we can do about it. And as you can see in the evidence that I've supplied, I mean, we've had parties on the docks, we've had all kinds of things going on in front, which is not even going to be addressed at this point.
Yeah.
We just have to live with it at this point, unless things change at some point. And a lot of liability, I'm sure you're aware of what breakwaters are, but our experience was, and these are in front of all the properties,
Uh-huh.
children climbing on them, adults as well. I mean, so much liability there, just, if they get injured, they get drowned out there. But these are the things that are occurring. And even damage to the Glass family, to their dock. Yes, so these things are happening. This is what we live with. This is our new reality, unfortunately.
Joanne or Charlie, do you have any questions for the appellant?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the question here. Been bringing out a lot of specific incidents and things that show incompatibility due to discord and disharmony, correct?
Yes.
Are you asking us or the appellant, or who you asking?
I'm asking the applicant, the appellant.
Absolutely. It's nothing but discord and disharmony. It's not, there's just no buffer from it. We have to live it. And we have to make sure, and we have to believe that just because they're gonna be permitted and that the people are gonna act, their guests are gonna act any different. They didn't act different, they don't care. They're there to party.
But that compatibility isn't the compatibility that we're guided by in regards to the residential use.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
So that is the issue.
That's the distinction.
right,
we have to
okay,
make.
so maybe, I don't know, I don't see this, I don't have all the information. I'm not privy to all this knowledge that Sherry has and you guys have. I'm just living through it. I can only share that. There you go.
Madam Chairman, this is Joanne.
Yeah, hi Joanne. You have a question?
Jill, can you? Yes, I do. I have a question. Jill, can you explain to us give us some examples of what compatibility means? We have a real question about that with all the dissension that's happening here.
So the compatibility standard looks at the use that's proposed and compares it to other uses in that zone
Land uses?
that are allowed.
Yeah.
And it's discord or disharmony with those uses. So in other words, if you have
So are we talking then about a residential use and that's it? We're not talking about the ramifications of action conditions of the people who use it.
That's correct. So what staff does is we limit to 2 vehicles per unit, because that's a residential use is 2 vehicles. We limit it to occupancy based on your bedroom. So this is a 3-bedroom home. It's typically 2 people in 1 bedroom, so that's 6 people. We do noise, which is actually more restrictive than if you had a long-term rental. What else? There's other conditions on there, I just can't recall them all, but. And we do require that you have some type of property manager, so.
Nuisance plan.
Yeah, so if you, if somebody calls us with a code enforcement issue, then we have somebody that we have on file that we can contact.
There's just something, I know the applicant provided data on the impacts on visitors on a vacation rental versus residential use, residents, and how it's less impact. But what I hear here is with the toy haulers and the road, you've got long trailers. I mean, I know that those things
So
are really.
you could restrict further.
So I'm thinking that there needs to be another condition regarding the type of vehicles and trailers and equipment that can be allowed on that road.
But can the property owner bring those on the road?
Yeah, but you're just talking about your visitors. You
Yeah,
can,
visitors.
you can say
Yeah.
that they have to be vehicles, a single vehicle, no trailers.
I was gonna bring that up as well.
Yeah.
Because that's
Or a
effectively you have
trailer.
4 vehicles on the property because those
Yeah.
trailers are so darn long. And if you get rid of the trailers, you get rid of the UTVs, and a lot of that nuisance associated with it, so more
Right.
terms and conditions.
So, another question, Joe, what about noise? How do you, determine, when noise is a problem? I mean, is that a decimal thing, or is that fireworks, or is that people shooting guns, what is that?
So we suggest that you add quiet times on your plan. So that way that we can show that, you're not affecting the neighbors, so whether it's 9 PM, 6 PM, we have something there. And then again, Sherry did bring up a really good point, like if there was a sign outside, they wouldn't even have to call us, they could call that property manager directly and report if there was noise happening, which is, again, more restrictive than if somebody had a long-term rental, because there is no noise ordinance other than on the dunes when it comes to Coos County.
Yeah.
And what about a nuisance ordinance?